When I got the new airframe, I got new controls for the tail of the airplane too. Ones on the other airplane were still functional. We got the airframe, the airplane originally in 2001, and it's been on floats in salt water for the entire time. We disassembled all the control surfaces about 10 years ago, cleaned them up, painted them, repaired them, and recovered them. About 5 years ago, we had to pull one of the elevator or the horizontal stabilizers off and tear it back and put a repair on one of the ribs on it because it had rusted. I haven't taken those other ones apart to see how bad they are, and it may be that I may be able to clean them up and sandblast them and recover them and use them for spares or something, but I went ahead and bought new ones. These things take a real beating back there on the tail of the airplane. They get full effect of all of the salt spray, but then when the airplane is sitting on the ramp, the tail is just inches above the salt water, and it sits there 6, 7, 8, 9 months a year. For a while it was there for 12 months a year until I built the hangar out here and started pulling out in the wintertime. They just stay over that salt water all the time, and so they take a beating. So I got new ones. These are Northern Airframes elevators. They're the ones that build them, and they're PMA approved. This is the number for the elevator assembly, and you can see their powder coat primer on them. Now some powder coats are better than others. Whatever you have on for the base coat on here, the coat on there has to be MEK proof. If it's not, it'll pull when you put the fabric on, polytack on and put the fabric and stuff, it'll just pull the paint right off. Some powder coats are better than others at that, and this airframe is supposed to be MEK proof or supposed to be able to fabric right onto it. But these elevators and controls I wasn't sure of because they're just a primer, and as you can see it's kind of a gray primer. Wasn't sure whether that was able to fabric right over those or not. But when I was suspicious of them. Well, one of the things they say in the polyfiber handbook is if you take a rag, saturate it with MEK, and then wipe over whatever your paint is, if you come up with paint, if paint comes off onto the rag, then it's not going to hold up. And these control surfaces are like that. This is not MEK, this is just lacquer thinner that I'm rubbing on here. And you can see the paint comes right off on it and it softens it right up. Took these down to the shop to paint them, and I sprayed them with lacquer thinner to wash them off and get all the fingerprints and stuff off, and it softens that primer right up. So if I left this rag on there any length of time, that would just dissolve all of that primer right off of there. So I'm taking all these controls down, cleaning them up, and painting them with polyfiber primer. And this is the stuff I'm using, except that what I'm using is white. It's the same exact stuff, EP 420, but I'm using white. And it's a two-part epoxy primer, and it is MEK proof. Once you put it on there, you can wipe it with a rag with solvent with lacquer thinner MEK, and all it does is polish it up. It won't come off at all. Mainly what I need to paint to coat are the surfaces that the fabric gets glued down to, so that's what I'm going to do. Primarily concerned with the sections that fabric gets glued to, like this main tube here and end ribs and stuff like that. I've got all the tail control surfaces all painted with the Stitz polyfiber primer except for the rudder. And before I do the rudder, I need to drill holes through each one of these ribs to run wires through them. We got to have one wire running to the tail position light, and then I got to have one wire running all the way up to the top there for the beacon. So I'll go ahead and drill holes in each one of those ribs. I'm going to keep the holes fairly close to the front here, just far enough back that I can get the drill bit in there and drill it without scratching anything up in there. And I'm going to use a unibit to drill the holes with. I don't need very big holes, but I'm going to make them big enough so I can put a grommet in them and fish the wire through there. So it'd probably be a 1/4 inch or maybe a little bigger. I want to do that before I paint them, so we get paint on the raw edges, and so the raw edges get covered up. I got holes drilled in each one of those ribs and deburred, and they're all lined up all the way up to the top. Get this painted now, and then when we get ready to put fabric on it, we can just run a string of wires through there and put grommets in it after I get it painted.